Yep.
Would a home with a HERS rating of 60 or less enjoy any kind of premium in the marketplace?
That I'm going to let Chris talk about.
There's several different things that they could get as a premium, but that's at least Energy Star qualified, which qualifies you for certain tax incentives and rebates for that.
I was referring to the market value, like if you have two homes side by each of comparable size. I mean, one would think that the HERS rated home of 60 or better would sell better than the one next door, which probably has something 130 or above. And I'm just wondering whether the market has moved at all to where you might enjoy a 5 to 12% premium on the marketplace.
That's a little difficult for me to say in particular because I haven't seen any statistics on it. Yeah, personally, I have not noticed that much of a difference. I've primarily noticed just an increase in interest level of homes that are more energy efficient. When it comes to actual value, the green market is still up and coming, so there aren't a lot of statistics yet to show exactly how much it appraises in value. I've seen actually very widely varying appraisal values of homes that are green. Boy, I'm thinking, you know, I don't know.
I think one of the most important things to think about is not so much that it increases the value in the home. In this given market, it does increase the value of the home, but it's probably the difference between moving your product and not selling your home. You know, that's probably the real difference you're talking about here. Because if someone says, well, this one has a HERS rating of 60 and this one has 130, well, I'm going to go with the 60 one, if they're the same price. You know, later on, once housing comes back, you'll see improvement in the home value over, you know, the other house. But right now, it's probably more of an instance of selling the home versus not selling it. So.
Right. That's probably better than I could. That is what I want to say, but that's a better way of saying it.
That was what I kind of assumed at this point, because hardly anybody understands what a HERS rating is.
Right, right. I can tell you that of the homes that I've seen in the MLS system that are designated as green, and that still is up to an individual listing agent. You know, some agents will call the house green if they just use low VOC paints when they you know, did some upgrades. But that in and of itself would not generally make a house green. You certainly wouldn't get an improved HERS rating because you used low VOC paints. In general, because the homes are more comfortable and more cost efficient, they do tend to attract more interest from buyers. So I can't say they're on the market for less. But whether they're getting a premium, as Chris said, with the market the way it is these days, you know, people are just trying to buy or sell whatever they see. The green part isn't yet their top priority.
Well, but that's true, but a home with a HERS rating of 60 versus 130 hits on your point before,
Yep.
Where you're going to have dramatically lower operating costs.
Right.
You know, and I don't know what the cladding on the outside might be, but I mean, in terms of your consumptive cost on the inside, is that you could be, you know, depending on what's built with, your savings of 30 to 70%.
Right. Yeah, that's very true. But the MLS system actually is slow to catch up. There aren't any criteria to select to advertise those homes. You know what I mean? For example, if someone has a fireplace, there's a checkbox in the system to say home has fireplace. But there aren't green features incorporated into the system yet, so it's hard to market those per se because they might have a HERS rating, but listing agents, especially if they're not familiar with green real estate or the value that green can bring, they don't necessarily advertise it properly.
Well,
So,
they're usually selling under the Energy Star banner, right? If they've got the higher efficiency rating.
if they, right, and there is an indication, most people, if it's an Energy Star rated home, that is usually indicated because whoever's listing it is most likely working with the developer who built that new building. And so they're savvy enough to know to advertise that. But for the general home, my market's Arlington, Somerville, Medford area, for those homes around there, many agents aren't yet familiar enough with the value added by that, so they don't advertise it properly. And that's another value that an Ecobroker brings, because we know to highlight those features. Yep.
Is there still resistance in the industry to moving towards some kind of universal energy rating system for homes? I know there's been a lot of discussion. What I've heard is that in general, the real estate industry is pretty resistant to the idea. Is
Yeah.
there any progress on that front that you're aware of?
Well, that's more of a question for Chris, since Chris is JOEGREEN Home. They're the actual auditors. They're much more familiar with that type of discussion.
I'll tell you, Paul, a lot of the, there's a movement to join like the HERS and the BPI together. That's probably gonna happen within the next year, I would say, for sure. I think the real point of contention is where people are saying, all right, if you're buying or selling a home, you have to have an energy audit, like making them mandatory. I think that's where a lot of areas of contention are, not so
like,
much.
because it's an unfunded mandate? basically?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's basically on the homeowner,
Right,
seller, or
right.
someone to do this. So it's not so much the audit itself, it's mandating that has to be done. That's really the point of contention.
Yeah, that was a big issue. I remember last year hearing a lot about that. There was a push to try to include that, but because the economy the way it is these days and the housing market, NAR, National Association of Realtors, lobbied against that. It would just make it more difficult to have turnover in the market, to get the market moving again.
Well, of course, in many cases, even with what on the outside looks like a reasonably good home, may come up with pretty low marks under the HERS rating system.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if they've done more of the cosmetic things instead of the less sexy things like proper air sealing and stuff like that.
Right.
People want to say, oh, I have a green home, so they go out and they think they can put solar on their roof or something. That's usually one of the last things you want to do, because if you do an improvement like that in your home, but you've got leaky windows and doors, all your savings is still going to go out the window. So that's the value an energy auditor brings, because they'll highlight those types of changes and features and actually assign a cost savings to each item, as opposed to someone just going out and trying to do it on their own and get a contractor, a general contractor who's not familiar to install solar, and then they think they've got a green home. Well, that's not quite true. So, if someone else had a question, I know we want to do questions and answers afterward, but since my presentation was so short, is it Leo?
That's okay. My question was more, you had mentioned that you have a blog that kind of communicates some of these things. How do you feel towards having affiliates reproduce or forward that to, let's say, social media outlets like a Facebook or a Twitter or something like that?
How do I feel about that?
Yeah.
I mean, having my personal stuff forwarded out? Oh, I don't have a copyright on any of my stuff. So
Okay.
I'm not trying to make money off of it. It's really a personal interest of mine, and it was one way I found I could differentiate myself as a real estate agent amongst the thousands of other agents out there. So I'm willing to share my info. If you see something on my blog you like, feel free to post it and share it. I'd love that. Because again, my interest is really in educating people and referring them to the experts like behind me here. So I don't have any intellectual property rights or anything on my stuff. So I just want to follow up and say one of the more important things I've noticed recently is the lower cost involved in performing a lot of the home energy upgrades. People are still, unfortunately, under the assumption that it costs a lot more to perform these upgrades. In the past, it used to cost, say, 10 to 15% more if you were building a home from scratch to incorporate energy efficiencies. Now, the real cost is much more closer to 2% over the original, compared to a conventional building method. So if you're going out talking to people, spread the word. Green does not cost more than